All right. It's good to see everybody. I just want to welcome all of you who are here for the first time. I see a few faces that I have not seen or met before. So I hope you're comfortable here at this church, and I hope you get something spiritual out of this meeting here today. So the title of the message is Decline of Love, and I think it's been happening here in this country and all over the world where this whole idea of concept of compassion and love and caring for another person is just out of the window. And we always have good justification for why we should hate somebody. Either they're here in the country illegally and they are breaking the law, or they are Chinese and they are a huge threat to our empire, or they are from South America, or they are from Africa, or whatever. But we always find a reason why we should not like somebody or dislike somebody. And I wonder, where do those reasons come from? Because they are not generated by me in my own heart. They come from above. They come from the state. They come from the government. They come from the propaganda. They come from the people who are controlling how the world runs. So in order for us to understand this a little bit better, I want to go back in time and tell you a story of the time of Jesus, for example. At the time of Jesus, Rome was the empire. The Roman Empire was in charge of the whole world. And the next slide is going to show you all of the countries that used to be a part of the Roman Empire at the time. Italy, obviously, Rome is in the middle of Italy, so all of Italy was totally conquered, and Roman Empire controlled it. Spain, Portugal, France, Belgium, Switzerland, Greece, Macedonia, Asia Minor, which is today's Turkey, North Africa, including Egypt, Syria, and Judea. All of these countries were part of the Roman Empire. So on the next picture, you're going to see the map of the Roman Empire. Look at all of these countries that Rome used to control. It's amazing what a huge empire it was. Rome was the empire that lived off of conquering other countries and nations. And they had the most powerful army in the world, and they would send their army to expand their empire. I guess we're going to get that back. We've been having problem with electricity. They were sending their armies into the world to conquer as many lands as they could. And once they would conquer a particular land, they would make them pay taxes. So the life in Rome, in the city of Rome, and in Italy, which was considered the center of the Roman Empire, the life there was pretty good. The life there was rich. You had a lot of wealthy people. You had a similar situation to what we have here in the United States and around the world anymore. You have a huge difference between those who are very rich and those who are very poor. In Rome, they even went further than that, than rich and poor. They also had slaves. And slave labor was about 30% of the population. So you had a huge slave labor that provided the goods and services for those who were richer or for those who were in power. I want you to get a sense of how big this empire was. So on the next slide, it's a little bit different picture. If you look from the beginning of Spain over there all the way to the end of Turkey, that's 3,500 miles. Los Angeles, New York is 2,800 miles. So this empire was 800 miles longer than the United States of America. So you can see how huge. You can imagine the logistics of keeping all of those countries in line, the countries that they have conquered. I mean, in each country, just like in Judea, in Palestine, when Jesus was born, they had their own representatives. They installed their own king. They had people who collected taxes. They had their own military posts and army, and they just had to control that. This is just Jerusalem and Israel and Palestine. Now imagine they had to do the same thing with Spain. Even England, even a portion of England was under the Roman Empire. All the way to France and Belgium and Netherlands and all the way into Germany. Even a portion of Germany was under them. So it was a huge job for them to control all of that, to bring taxes in. It was a huge job for them to keep the standard of living high for their citizens. Well, look, when we have elections here in this country, what is it that they talk about, the politicians? Oh, I'm going to make sure that we have jobs. And I'm going to make sure that you get paid good money. And I'm going to make sure, and they all make promises, right? Health care and jobs and cheap goods and everything is going to be great if I'm the president. Rome had the same situation. They had a population of people that they needed to keep happy. So in order to keep them happy, they constantly had to enlarge the empire. They constantly had to conquer another nation, another land, to get more taxes, more gold, more money, more goods, more of everything. Does that sound familiar? More of everything? It's like us today. Both the United States and Europe, we want more of everything all the time. In order for us to have more of everything, I just want you to understand the parallel here. We also need to expand, right? So now, for example, right now, today, our government is getting ready to invade the country of Venezuela. Why? Because they feel that if they do that, the price of oil is going to go down because we're going to control it, and then everybody's standard of living is going to be better. So you have another example of empire trying to expand, trying to get into this market, trying to get into that market, trying to make trade with China and India and Africa and all of these people. Why? Because they need to keep us happy. We are the voters. So in the same way, the Roman Empire had to keep their people happy, and they had to constantly expand. And how did they do it? They did it through military power. They did it through tremendous amount of discipline. The Roman Empire was brutal on their own citizens. It was a brutal society. Slaves were treated like nothing. Public executions. You would have what the movies that we see about the games in the arena where the gladiators kill each other. That was real. That was reality. That was the entertainment of the day. Human life meant nothing. The word compassion meant nothing. The word love meant nothing. The only people you loved was your own family. When you look at the Roman emperors, Caesars and the rest of them, even their own family was a target oftentimes. You had kings who were so afraid that their son was going to replace them that they had their own children killed. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, the idea of loving another human being just was not existent. Decadence, immorality, sexual promiscuity, everything was a go. Everything was okay. There was nothing that was off limits. This was the empire, 3,500 miles wide. And they constantly needed to conquer more, to subdue more. And throughout that whole process, you get to the point where nobody cared about anybody. You could die on the street. Nobody would care. I saw that with my own eyes. We went to Indonesia on my first trip to Indonesia, not the second one. And we were in this city, I forget the name. I think it was Makassar. And there was a woman with 3 little kids sleeping in the little city park on a bench, and you could tell that this was a different situation than would be here in the United States, because you could tell that they lived there permanently. You could tell that there was no social services that were going to put the kids into a loving home. You could tell that there was no food stamps. There was no food banks. There was no street beat ministry to go out there and feed the homeless people. It was just, you're poor, you're left on your own, and you scrounge through garbage to feed your kids. And she was not the only one. You know, when you start paying attention, you could see that there was hundreds and hundreds of people like that living in total poverty. And the rest of the society, there's nothing they can do because they're also poor. This is how it was in Rome. There was no sense of compassion for another human being. The only time they fed people, the government did, was when they were afraid that there was going to be a rebellion. Then they would let them all come into the arena, watch some games, and watch people kill each other, and they give them a piece of bread to keep them pacified. This is the environment into which Jesus was born. Into a society that just did not care about human life whatsoever. And the same situation was being replicated in the land of Palestine, Israel. Romans were controlling it. Jewish people were rebelling against Romans from time to time. Everybody was trying to survive. Nobody had time or means or opportunity to go be helping somebody else, a leper who is going hungry for days at a time. There was no social services. There was no compassion. So when I said to you that I want to preach about the decline of love, I want to tell you that I believe it's by design. I believe it's by design. And you can go as far back as the Roman Empire and see how this type of environment benefited the government and those who are in power. So then, in 980, so when Jesus was 9 years old, there was a battle of, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Teutoburg Forest. And this is when German tribes decimated Roman legions. Rome, at that point, they were just destroyed. 3 Roman legions were completely destroyed in this battle. Romans, they were trying to push north into Germany. German tribes got united under Arminius, and they defeated them. It was a major defeat, one of the biggest defeats in the history of the Roman Empire. Roman legion on the next slide you can see is composed of 5,500 soldiers. So 3 of those were lost. So you're looking at 15,000, 16,000 Roman soldiers. Back then that was a huge army, 15,000. That was a huge loss. These guys were not your ordinary, they were extremely well trained. They knew how to kill. They were organized. They had generals. They had spies everywhere. They had discipline and order. They had the best armor. They had the best spears. They had the best swords. They had the best training. They had the best food. They had the best doctors and the medical attention. They were top military in the world. And what happens? They lose in this battle. They lose, and they lose bad. They lose so bad that it is said that this defeat shook the empire's confidence and halted its northern expansion. So now imagine, this is what Jesus was born into this situation. The empire that rules you is freaking out because they're losing power. Their way of life is going to go away if this continues. They just lost a major battle. And they want to reinforce, and they want to rebuild, and they want to make sure that their empire survives and continues on. So they want to do what they always used to do. They want to expand, they want to conquer, they want to treat human life as nothing, they want to continue with their system of slavery, different castes of people, different groups, and everybody knew their place. If you were a servant, you were a servant. If you were a rich man, you were a rich person. If you were nobility, you were a nobleman. Everybody knew who. They wanted to preserve this whole system. So Rome was built on endless expansion. They expanded through conquests, new land. They needed new land all the time. They needed more slaves. They needed more money. They needed more gold. They needed more taxes. And all of a sudden, all of this is coming to an end. Now, I'm using this story. Obviously, you already see the connection, the parallels between what went on over there and what's going on in our country today and in the world. I mean, we have had this system of capitalism, wealth, conquests, trade, business, monetary supply, gold reserves, Fort Knox. You had all of this thing that built this country, right? And the people who are in power, they want to continue to make sure that it continues. They want to make sure that we stay on top. They want to make sure that there is no rebellion and that people can pay their bills and survive and all of that stuff. So they're going to do what empires do. There is a similarity between Roman Empire and consumerism of today, both not just in the United States and Europe, but all over the world. We are not the only ones who are doing this in the United States. China is trying to do the same thing. Japan, Russia, India. Everybody's trying to expand through markets, new products, new credit. Everybody's trying to be bigger and better. But what does that do to a society? In order for the Roman Empire to have continued like it did, it needed to treat human life as nothing. It needed their citizens to approve of all of their wars and of all of their conquests. And the way they did that is by propaganda, telling people that those German tribes up there, they are barbarians and they need to be destroyed. And if we don't destroy them, they're going to destroy us. But the real motivation was just conquering and taking over their land. But the public bought into it and said, okay, those bad Germans, we got to destroy them. Let's go over there to war. And I see similarities with that going on today. The population of the United States, the population of Europe, the population of China, all of these countries, the government is telling you that we need to be afraid of these other people. We need to not like these other people because they are the enemy. But the real motivation is not that. The real motivation is more conquest, more wars, more missiles, more military-industrial complex. And both Rome and consumerism cannot survive without constant growth. You need to have constant growth to keep the systems going. And both systems fear contentment because it stops the cycle. If you say, I'm content with what I have, imagine if everybody in the United States just said today, right now, this moment, if 350 million people in the United States right now, this moment said, I'm not going to go to Walmart tomorrow. I don't need nothing. I have enough clothes. I have all the shoes I'm ever going to wear. I'm not going to go buy another car. I'm going to live with what I have maybe for the next year. Imagine if everybody did that. What would happen to the empire? You would have a total collapse. You would have a total collapse of the economy, and that's why they cannot allow that for us to be content. So in this system and in this moment in history comes Jesus. This is the time in history when the Roman Empire is worried about collapsing, and this is when Jesus shows up on the scene, and he starts teaching people, be content with what you have. He starts teaching people, love your enemy. Love God and love your neighbor. Do to others as you would want them to do to you. And this went totally against everything that the empire stood for. Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So this is what Jesus is teaching. And the empire back then and today is opposed to this, finds this as a threat. If you start going around telling people to love each other, I'm being serious now. If you start telling people to go love each other and to care for the poor and all of that stuff, you're going to be put on I believe you're going to be put on some kind of a government watch list as a threat to the society and the survival of the system. Well, you know, the FBI and the powers have been following and spying on preachers since the beginning of the United States. Why? Why? And we naively say, well, why would they spy on us? All we are doing is telling people that we need to love each other. Well, there's a threat. There's a threat to the system. If you love each other, then you're not going to be happy when the government starts abusing somebody. You're not going to be happy with the slavery system. You're not going to be happy when people are suffering. And if you're not happy about it and want change, then you have to change the whole system. So Rome's authority was built on fear, dominance, and hierarchy. Caesar, or the king, was Lord, and the empire ruled through military might and social order. So this is the system that was back then, 2,000 years ago, and this system is also today. We just call it, here we call it democracy, or republic, federal republic. In Europe they call it democracy. But you still have the military might, and you still have the police, and you still have the social order, and you still have legals and illegals, and you still have haves and have-nots, and you still have oligarchs, and you have poor people, and you still have Congress, you know, where in the last 18 years they voted 9 times to give themselves a raise and 18 times not to raise the minimum wage, and you still have all of that stuff. You have the empire that's trying to keep the system going, and then you have Jesus who says that his kingdom was not of this world. Do you see the conflict between Christianity and the systems of this world, whether back then 2,000 years ago or today? Now, why is this important? I'm not preaching this because I want to change some kind of a social structure, or I want to have some kind of a revolution, or I want people to vote one way or the other. That's not the point. The point is to examine ourselves as Christians to see which system did I embrace in my heart. You see what I'm saying? Did I embrace what Jesus is teaching? Love your neighbor? Or am I a part of this Roman system which says, who cares about the neighbor? Let them take care of themselves. Who cares about a God? Who cares about any of this stuff? Commandments. In Jesus' kingdom, the greatest serves, right? Jesus says, if you're the greatest, you need to be the one that serves. And Jesus gets off of the dinner table and puts on the apron and washes the feet of his disciples by kneeling down in front of them. You see, in the kingdom of Caesar, it doesn't work that way. So this whole message of Jesus subverted what the Roman Empire was trying to accomplish. It subverted their value system. The Roman Empire felt threatened by what Jesus was teaching. Instead of power through force, Jesus preached power through love. Instead of control through fear, Jesus was talking to people about freedom that you have by having faith in God. Jesus was teaching equality of all human beings. Jesus was teaching mercy and compassion. And to Rome, this sounded revolutionary, undermining Caesar's absolute authority. On the next slide, it says that every empire trembles when love replaces fear as the ruling power. I'm telling you, you start telling people that we need to love each other, you'll find yourself in the crosshairs. That's not what the system is all about. And we as Christians are always going to be a threat to those in power because we are telling people that it's not right for little kids to go hungry in the richest country in the world. It's not right. A lot of these things that are going on in the world right now. And governments don't want to hear that. Rich people don't want to hear that. Big corporations don't want to hear that. Matthew 24:12 says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. This was the situation during the time of Jesus in the Roman Empire. Iniquity. If you look at the Berean Standard Bible, it reads a little bit different. It says, because of the multiplication of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. And we have this situation, I believe it was perpetrated on purpose against the citizens of the United States and the citizens of the world, where we are being taught that everything is okay, greed is okay, lying is okay, stealing is okay, fudging on your taxes is okay. All kinds of lifestyles are okay. Immorality, cheating on your spouse, everything is okay. If you can get away with it, it's okay. This was the Roman Empire, and this is now the modern world today. You can get away, it's okay. You get away with it, don't worry about it. Just do it. And this is what the Bible predicted. It says the multiplication of wickedness. And if you look at the world today, it's getting worse and worse. I wonder, I sometimes wake up at night and I wonder, how come people don't love like they used to? And it dawned on me, we don't love as a society like we used to because a lot of people don't believe in Jesus anymore. They don't believe in the historical Jesus. I mean, if you were born in the last, 25, 30 years, you never went to church, you never learned about Jesus, you never learned about love, then you don't have that value system. Then this whole idea of love your neighbor means nothing to you. Why would you love anybody? Why would you love anybody? And we are living now in this society, I believe, by that I mean the whole world. People don't know Jesus, don't know his principles, and therefore they don't have it instilled in them, educated to them, that we need to take care of each other and love another human being, no matter who they are. Because that's what the Bible teaches. When it says to love your neighbor, it doesn't mean just love those who are Jewish, if you're Jewish. Or just love those who are Christian, if you're a Christian. Or just love the Americans, if you're an American. Or just love the Russians, if you're a Russian, and then don't love Germans because they're no good. I've been hard on Germans today. No, Germans are great people. I love Germans. You see what I'm getting at? Everybody's so silent in this church. I have no idea if anybody got anything that I said here today. I'm going to go home and I'm going to wonder, what did I just do? What did I say? Rome, look at this, tolerated many religions, but not rival kings. In the world today, will tolerate religions, but it won't tolerate another king. And our king is Jesus. Our king is Jesus. And nothing changed from 2,000 years ago. Jesus still stands for the same things that he stood for 2,000 years ago. Jesus still says to love your neighbor. And Jesus still says to take care of those who are suffering, of the dispossessed, and the poor, and the illegal, I would say. Jesus still says that, right? Nothing changed there. So Jesus is still, to this day, a threat to the Roman Empire. Still. The charge or the sign above the cross there was Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Why do you think they put that on the cross? The Romans did. That was not a theological statement. It was a political statement. They wanted to show all of the Jews at the time that they had no king. They wanted to show the whole world at the time that no king would be tolerated anywhere in their empire other than Caesar. That's why they put that sign on top of the cross. They wanted to send a message to anybody who walked by that cross that this is what happens if you try to resist and oppose the teachings and the philosophy of the kingdom, of the empire. That's why they did it. Because he was a threat. Because he was teaching people to love even Romans. Even the Romans, he wanted people to love. And this is what we are dealing with in Christianity. Now, behind all of this are the powers of spiritual nature. Behind all of this, there are demonic spirits. The purpose of which is to put a seed of hate and anger and prejudice and racism and murder and violence into the hearts of the human beings. That's what demonic powers want. That's what they want. They want to put the seed of that violence against other human beings. And Jesus is trying to put the seed of compassion and love. And everything I said today was said in order for each one of us to look into our own heart and say, okay, who do I hate? Who do I hate? We all have moments when we hate somebody, don't we? Maybe on I-25 you hate somebody. Maybe you hate somebody at your work. Maybe you're watching news and getting all excited and bothered about some political view. You know, I look at social media and I see people who are extremely angry about what's happening in Europe, and they live in Cincinnati. And I'm thinking, what do you care about Europe? And I see people in Australia commenting about what's happening in the United States and getting all worked up over it. And I'm thinking, you live in Melbourne, Australia. Mind your own business. Right? But you see what I'm saying? We get angry, we get hateful, and I say, let's just focus on here and now. Let's focus on the job that God gave us. Let's focus on the responsibilities that Jesus gave us, the responsibilities to people in our vicinity, in our neighborhood, in our city, people who are struggling. We have people who are going hungry. You think things are going to get better, or they're not going to get better? UPS, 35,000 people they just laid off 2 days ago. Amazon, 30,000 people they just laid off a few days ago. This is going to accelerate. It's going to be like anything you have ever seen in your life. By this time next year, we could have 5 million jobs lost in this country. To AI, to automation, to robotics, to this great drive and need and urge to cut down the costs on these products because we want to make this thing cheaper, so we're going to fire, you know. By the way, what was the company? Amazon. They fired 30,000 people. Next year, they are planning to fire 500,000 people because they want their product to be cheaper. They're not even thinking about, okay, from a year from now, who's going to be able to buy my product if everybody's fired? So what I'm saying is, things are not going to get any better. They're going to get a lot worse. Our food bank that we have here on the property should be filled to the brim because people are going to need help. Our prayer teams in this church should be working overtime to pray for the people and the needs that people have in this community and in this church. In other words, this church should be active in doing the work that Jesus gave us. Things are not going to get better. Things are only going to get worse. Are we going to be ready? This concert that we are having is for Jamaica. They just suffered 180-mile-an-hour winds went through that island, which already is poor. Their houses are not built to sustain. It's not like in Florida where you have a code and you can't build a house unless you build it like a bomb shelter. No. The island has been destroyed. So we're going to do a little bit, maybe raise $1,000, I don't know, to help an Adventist church over there to get back on their feet. So as a church, what I'm saying is we have to evaluate who we are, where we are, what do we believe in, whether or not we love or hate. We need to give our life to Jesus, and we need to do the work that he did. Same work. The last verse that I have is Matthew 25:40, and the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers," least. He doesn't say for a rich guy. He doesn't say for an important person. He doesn't say for a congressman or for an actor or for a PhD doctor. No, it says for the least. Jesus deliberately used the word least. Well, who are the least amongst us in this city? And that's what we need to do as a church. Work hard. I would advise you, if you have your job, keep it. Save every penny you can. Don't go to Walmart tomorrow if you don't have to. Don't buy anything that you don't need for the next foreseeable future. Just protect yourself and your family as best as you can and work for the Lord. Do the work that the Lord wants you to do. And then he's going to see us through. We are a part of his kingdom, not of any other kingdom. Anyways, that was my rant for today. God bless you.